All right, so tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in occupational therapy.
Sure. I am originally from Chicago. I went to college and from there I studied speech and hearing science. I kind of thought I wanted to be a speech language pathologist. I had babysat for someone who the mom was a SLP, and I was like, oh, that sounds pretty fun. And um, kind of went down that path. And then as I was graduating, deciding on grad school, I was like, oh, I don't know if this is the right choice. And um, so yeah, I ended up, my mom worked in a school in Chicago Public Schools as a teacher and then a librarian. And she was like, you should come shadow the OT at my school. And I was like, what is OT? I didn't even know. It's just not as well known, I think, as PT and SLP. Um, and yeah, I did that and I was like, oh, this is cool. We're doing like a lot more out and about in the school. The students she worked with, I remember, did like a plant watering kind of project from a special ed classroom. They kind of went around the school and took care of that. And I was like, this is interesting. I like this. I just felt like OT was kind of broad and lots of options. So then I did a few more prereqs and got into it that way. Did my
Mm-hmm.
master's.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So what sorts of things do you do as an occupational therapist? What sorts of things do you work on? Because I get that it's pretty broad and pretty specific, and so if you could talk a bit about that.
Sure. At school, a lot of it is just kind of, I always tell students like that I help kids with all the jobs they have to do at school. So that could be, you know, your morning routine, taking your coat off, hanging up things on your cubby, helping feed yourself, doing some writing, or using technology for writing, using speech to text, typing. I feel like we kind of look at what kids are doing and seeing what adaptations they need or how we can help increase independence with kind of all sorts of occupations. So yeah, it is broad, and that is something that is kind of nice about it though, because we might end up finding things that we can help kids be more successful with.
Mm-hmm. My next question is, what sorts of things do you look for as an occupational therapist, when looking at whether a patient, can be independent and can do things on their own? What sorts of things do you do as an occupational therapist in that regard?
For independence, I think first of all, just like really knowing that independence looks different for everyone. Some people, like going back to a writing example, some kids use pencils, some kids draw pictures, some might type or use speech to text. Um, I think getting students involved in as much as possible and having them do it as much as possible is important. And even, that might look like having an adult scribe to them and they verbally share the story. I think as long as um, students are engaged in the process, that's kind of what we want for independence.
Yeah, because I mean, every student has their own needs, and so they require things to be tailored, differently.
Totally. And I think, you know, education is kind of looking at universal design for learning as kind of a buzzword right now. So that is good because I think people are realizing like everybody does things differently and we need to offer, accommodations and things that could help everybody.
Hmm.
So
My next
hopefully,
question is, what sorts of stakeholders do you work with, in your particular field? I understand that the students are one of your stakeholders, but just like other stakeholders, um, yeah.
totally. I mean, the student's definitely the most important stakeholder. but it's definitely a team approach, which includes the student and the family, and then of course, school teachers, admin. So it's kind of everybody all working together, and just trying to get on the same page of like what the student needs and like what they want to be able to do. Especially as kids get older too, I think it's helping with that like autonomy and just self advocacy and things like that.
Mm-hmm. I know I don't have it in my questions, but what sorts of testimonials have you heard from students, parents, and others, in your line of work? So like when you're working with them, what sorts of things have they said?
I mean, there's definitely a range. I feel like sometimes when kids are really little, like they don't even always like realize they're like doing work, or it's just like, oh, I'm doing this fun thing with Miss Carey, but it's like we're really doing something for school, but maybe just in a way that's more accessible to them and more exciting. Um, and then I think it can be tricky with um, you know, what different people want. Like sometimes a parent or a teacher might have different expectations, and the student will have different expectations. So it's kind of balancing all of that. But yeah, I think parents are get really excited when they get to see their kids do something more independently, or just even having access to certain things that they might not have before. So kind of breaking down skills. And I think, yeah, parents are just getting excited about more inclusion lately, and just more access and more participation from kids.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of parents are like, I don't know what steps are best for my child to be more independent and successful. So they need that help from that occupational therapist, from that physical therapist, because with the IEP meetings and stuff like that, it's like a team effort.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a team, and um, getting everybody together for those meetings is good because we're hearing from everyone at once and kind of getting different perspectives. I try to like get that input and info throughout the year as well, but it is powerful when everyone's all together and really focused talking about the kid, um, and if the kid is old enough and willing and wants to participate, that's always exciting too when they start coming to their meetings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My last question is, how can occupational therapy help patients, have their best quality of life? What can so what can that sort of how can that make a difference in their lives? And also, like what can OT, students, who are studying what you are doing, what can they learn to, be prepared to come in this particular profession?
Yeah, I think being like client person student centered is super important. You know, there are always stakeholders involved in other settings that might be insurance and billing sorts of things. So I think through all of it, you just really have to focus on the client and the person, because that is who's the most important piece of everything. And if a student or client isn't motivated to do something, there's not really a huge point in focusing on it, right? Like if there's no buy-in or interest, it's hard to work on things for independence. So I think really getting input from our students is super important, because we can, tailor activities and assignments and try to get their interest in there, and get some buy-in from them, because otherwise it's tricky if someone isn't um, really, you know, interested in the topic or interested in the activity. So I think, yeah, really being person centered is important.
Mm-hmm. Yep.